All right. Well, thank you for everyone that's joining us today. I'm excited to be with the Pono Security team. We're going to be taking you through their journey so you guys can both reflect. Feel free to ask questions as we go along. If you put them in the Q&A box, we will be addressing all questions at the end of the session. It is my distinct pleasure to start off with the Pono team. We're going to go ahead and do some quick introductions. I am Nathan Shanks. I am the head of product here at TrackForce, and I am joined with a esteemed cast. I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Eric Waddell. I'm the COO of Pono Security and been with the company now for close to 10 years. So almost hit that milestone.
Hi, everybody. My name is KP Singh, Director of Sales, focus on driving new business, client relationships, and happy to be here.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Luis Lopez. I'm Director of Operations, and I hope everybody enjoys the webinar today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Novak. I'm Operation Admin with Pono Security. My primary role is managing tracking, configuration, and supporting day-to-day ops. And I'm happy to talk about the platform today.
Awesome. Well, you can see we have the right people. We got everyone from the head of operations to the folks that actually have to administer the product. That's why I'm particularly excited about this session today. We're actually going to be starting off with Eric, but I wanted to kind of highlight the situation that Pono ran into is not particularly unique, but certainly with success comes these types of challenges. And so, Eric, can you tell us a little bit about the complexity and the kind of the overall operational situation at Pono?
Yeah, definitely. Pono Security was founded in the Hawaiian Islands by Sean Wilson, the owner of the company, who is a very dear friend of myself and everybody on this meeting. And when we really look at the true Hawaiian culture, Pono actually means to do what's right, to be righteous, and that means at all times. So not just when somebody's looking over your shoulder or trying to find out what you're doing. It really just means to do what's right all the time. And so we started on just this small island of Maui, started out in the restaurant industry, just doing what we did best, and that was securing the local bars and restaurants on Maui, and then slowly moved into working a lot with multi kind of like condominiums, HOAs. There's a lot of obviously tourist travel within the islands, and with that comes various situations that these HOAs needed security. And so part of what our goal was when Sean first brought me onto the team was to try to grow Maui, just not only to be in the bars and restaurants, but actually to doing real security through multi industries, I would say, whether it be retail, whether it be these HOAs or communities that we were servicing. And we really took on quite a few there at the very beginning that was just really allowed us to understand the complexities of the security industry and what we all face in that sector. So it was just, we grew on Maui, we took it over to Oahu, started growing on Oahu, and then slowly, right as COVID kicked in, we're just getting busy in the Oregon area and the Washington area. And now, we're in 8 states. We've got hundreds of officers all over the United States, and it's just been a great succession every single step of the way, and one that has definitely told quite a few stories. Our goal is to write a book one day about our struggles and the things that we've gone through to hopefully help out. As we always say, you can't go to the big ones like Allied Universal or Securitas and say, hey, show us your playbook. How did you guys do it? So, creating your own kind of identity in this industry and really kind of showing off what our success has been, as well as helping others in the same, in our industry, and partnering with those others who are looking to grow on a scale that we've grown throughout the last 10 years.
Well, man, Eric, I've told you this before. I'm personally jealous of your guys' slogan, "Do what's right." I can't imagine how good it feels to work for a company that slogan is literally "Do what's right." I think that's incredible. But from restaurants to, office spaces, obviously we're going to talk a lot today about kind of that challenge of the diversity of that. What types of issues were introduced to you when you went from kind of that conventional restaurant bar scene into the commercial world of defending offices and larger complexes?
I would say that one of the biggest issues with us was just the incident reporting. The officers actually documenting what was going on during their shift, supporting our clients with maintenance issues that were happening around anything that was safety wise that could affect them. We really wanted to take it to another level when it came to how we were supporting our clients. Because really, again, when you look at that statement of do what's right, part of that Hawaiian culture of do what's right is we're really an extension to the clients, the properties that we're watching over. So we're part of their team. We want them to know that we're there to support them, that it is a true partnership. You start off as a baby and you grow into, walking and, getting out of diapers and doing what the client's expectations, meeting those client expectations. But at the end of the day, it was really, how do we show our value to our clients through our reporting efforts and the mitigation of any incidents that would be happening on their properties.
No, that's a big one. Well, so let's double click on that a little bit, because I think that's a great point, that it isn't just about being able to write up an incident. It's not just about being able to service that client and that kind of one-on-one interaction. It's actually being able to do that at a scale that makes sense, right? And be able to do it reliably and more consistently. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that. If we can double click on, how you guys built your service around that kind of consistency, maybe some of the challenges that you ran into, stuff that certainly, as your quote says here, kept you up at night. And I know that especially in the physical security world, that's a very real, very meaningful statement. So while you were transitioning from, just doing restaurants into those commercial properties, what are some of those things that kept you up at night?
Not knowing what the officer was doing, not being able to see it in real time. I think that is one of the things that has really benefited our company in the growth and the scaling of our company. And that is being able to monitor the officers in the field, and not just monitoring them to see what they're doing, but also to make sure that they're safe, and being able to see the officers reporting in real time, being able to look at their geo tracks, being able to react to a situation that maybe needs to be brought to the client's attention in real time, was just critical for us, especially in a hot spot where there might be heavy crime happening or issues that the client may be experiencing. Being able to see things in real time was just it kind of gave us a sense of ease, knowing that we were there to support our team. And that's one of the things that we in Hawaii, the home, the family life is really considered your ohana. And we want to make sure that our guards had all the support they needed. And we weren't able to give that to them without having a technology platform in place. And so that was part of the main reason why we looked at technologies, and we looked everywhere. We looked at everything that was available at that time. And at that time, what fit our needs was Silvertrack, and Silvertrack, did a good job of letting us see exactly what the officers were doing and giving us that visibility, and also making sure that they were safe out there in the field. So it really took us to the next level, especially in the islands where things are kind of still outdated in a lot of senses. Just being over there, and being so remote, it gave us the opportunity to introduce to clients technology that they had never seen before, had the ability to work with a company or partner with a company with.
I mean, really embodying that, that do what's right. I love it.
Yes.
So something that, certainly I frequently think about, that everyone doesn't like change, but everyone expects progress. And this is where I'm going to go to KP. You had to have kind of this tough decision to make, that you were on something that worked, but at some point that change, that thing we don't like to do, is going to be forced to create progress. What was that inflection point? Tell me about this migration thought process going into it, fundamentally, I mean, Eric set you up a little bit. It sounds like as you were scaling and trying to standardize, but give us the context. Give us, enrich that point if you don't mind about that. Why did you decide to make the move?
Yeah, and I like that that quote you mentioned earlier. But for us, it became a single tool that could do a lot of functions in one platform. So yes, we could do some of the guard tracking within SilverTrack, but then the accounting team was living in a different software. The sales team was living in a different software. So how can we all work off the singular platform and have one single source of truth and kind of lean into this platform? And I kind of say this all the time as well, is that Tractic allows us to do our job easier, which makes our job, we can do it better. So we can do things before, it would take a little more effort. Like Eric was saying, we're checking on the guards more often, couldn't sleep at night, just more frequency of these issues were popping up. But knowing that the fact that everything's in Tractic, it's all being documented, it can be run through there, we can always go there and look for the information. It just makes all of our jobs easier. And because it's easier, we can do our job better. And also because it's easier, we can scale. So we are all remote folks. I'm in Seattle, Eric's in Oregon, Novak's in Serbia, Luis is in Las Vegas. I don't think it'd be possible to run this company at this scale without a tool like Tractic. And just knowing that multiple entities of the business can all work from one platform. So there's no confusion. It's not invoicing is not matching the guard hours. Everything's feeding off of one system. Again, allows us to do our job easier, which gives us the flexibility to scale and grow with a very lean team without necessarily having to add a bunch of headcount to manage the complexity of a growing business.
That's interesting you say that, because there's this constant that it's like we have to do more with the same. And I think a lot of people that's going to resonate with. And it's not like somebody's out there, some magic budget just keeps increasing. A lot of the times you actually have to find to do more with the same, not necessarily do more with less. I actually really resonated, Eric, with your comment around giving the guard what they need. That's a big central point of, almost all of the hours I spent with the engineering team is giving the guards what they need, balanced with a lot of that, putting it all together and trying to create cohesive platform. So KP definitely resonating with that, having to do more with the same, makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of people out there are experiencing that.
Yeah, Nathan, I just want to touch on that too. Is when you talk about doing, more for, more with less, or, less with more, there's a middle ground there. And that middle ground is giving the employee, giving the officers the support they need and the tools that they need in the field, also while giving the back end and the management the ability to oversee what the officers are doing and really passing that information on to the client. Because in the partnerships that we have with our clients, they're busy just like we're busy. And so it's very hard for them to go through their DARs with a fine tooth comb, where we as a company can easily access that. We're viewing the reports in real time with our 24-hour dispatch team, and knowing that dispatch team is there ensuring that the reports are well written, that the photographs of the property or the incidents are collaborated in one system, really supports the client and the officer and the management team that is all running the companies.
And I think what you're speaking to, Eric, is this escalating expectation. Have you heard this philosophy that we have as humans? We have this constant escalating expectation. And in a digital world, there are implications to that escalating expectation. Some of it is centralization, I think, but I also believe very intimately that the alignment of your business into that technology is actually what makes this work. Just you can buy all the tech that you want, but if you've not been able to align it, I think that's a nice segue to talk to Novak a little bit about why. Obviously, you guys were having some success with SilverTrack. We try to meet businesses right at where they're at, but it wasn't doing what you needed to anymore. And so maybe Novak, you can kind of reflect a little bit with me on what are the distinct things in the Tractic platform that stood out? And we'll do a kind of a comparison for the folks that are out there that are interested in the specifics. And I think Eric highlighted a couple of those key areas. But Novak, what are your opinions about what were the distinct differences that forced that decision that KP spoke about just 2 slides ago?
I mean, it's definitely attention. So when you have less clients, you're able to provide that attention to them, to details, But when you're looking to be successful, you need to be prepared to scale and grow. So it comes down to the organization and the structure that you're building. So having every department working on the same platform, you're building that layering structure. So nothing is missed, everything, you're completely focused on accuracy. So everything that goes to the client is something that went through several departments, and you know that the officers on sites are not alone. They always have that support provided by Tractic, because our dispatch is always overseeing their performance and just keeping them focused on their duties. So there are a lot of features that Tractic provides. So it's a very flexible platform. It's not forcing you to work in a certain way. So you're molding that platform in a way that works best for you. And that's something that we like the most. For example, one of those features is definitely the client portal access, and you can build out that portal entirely how you want it to be. So also the clients are able to log in into that at any time and just see what the guard is doing in real time. You know, you can do that with some custom analytics. They can oversee the reports, the schedule, the tracks of the guard. They can always know where the guard is at any time, and just layering that operation is something that brought success to us.
So if I have to call Eric out for a minute,
Yeah.
You mentioned the DAR, you mentioned incident reports. Novak just mentioned the client portal. KP talked a lot about unification. I'm going to make you pick maybe one of those that you felt was probably the linchpin or something that might have driven you to make the move. And I'm talking about that inflection point from change, right? You had a successful operation, things were going great. Or any of those distinct things, that tipping point for you in your mind?
Yeah, I would say the flexibility and the being able to mold the Tractic software into what your specific company is
Got
looking
it.
to achieve. That is probably, there's so many systems out there in technology where you're defined by the technology you have. And you said it, you could have all the technology in the world and still be mediocre. Tractic really gave us, once we moved into the Tractic family of platforms, it gave us the ability to customize exactly what we were looking to do and to kind of put our own identity on that rather than just us confined to,
The way you can.
yeah,
That
exactly.
makes, that makes a lot of sense. By the way, even from a market position perspective, Silvertrek is really a product that's designed for guarding. Tractic is designed to be designed around your operation. And I think there's an important distinction that you're talking about. But I will be the first to admit, you need a talented group like we have on the call today to set some of this stuff up. You need to have defined processes. You need to be able to write that book, walk
Yes.
those shoes to be able to be very clear and deliberate. And we have some customers that kind of can use it, out of the box, but I think that's a really important distinction. And so if we kind of double click into this, and I'm going to put this unfortunately back on you, Novak. You did a great job kind of explaining the high level values. I'm gonna do the same thing, call you out. If you had to pick a couple of these distinct capabilities that you said were kind of night and day different, or maybe even said better, had a more meaningful impact on kind of day to day and the operations that you experience, what would you like to highlight for us from the platform features after your post Tractic era, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it's accuracy. I believe that everything that we do day to day is completely accurate. As I mentioned, we are going through a lot of layers, a lot of departments before anything gets to the client. And just that oversight that you're able to give to each site is something that's most important. And that's the client satisfaction. If you're able to satisfy them and identify every everything that's wrong at the certain clients, or everything that you're doing right, just to pinpoint that and work off of that, is something that's just providing a lot of transparency with the clients, and that's building trust. We are never billing them for anything that we did not service them. As you can see, the invoicing is completely tied directly to the labor hours. So our billing department is always confident that when they reach out to their part of job, it's easy, and we never get any complaints from the clients. And I think that that's making our life a lot easier for everyone.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off that if you don't mind, Nathan. I'll say this: the fact that invoicing is tied to labor hours and is integrated with payroll and timekeeping, that right there alone ensures that's that support that we talk about for the officer. There's nothing worse than getting a paycheck and it's wrong, right? We all know that feeling.
Oh, it's the worst.
So when
Absolutely
we're
the worst.
able to, pay our team that is out there doing the hard work, that are the boots on the ground, and get it accurate and consistent to them, that's one of the biggest things that on their notches, are we doing a good job in the background? And so for us, being able to have those two key factors in one system, and believe me, I've looked at all the systems, and those are two high level items that a lot of other software packages just don't have.
KP, what were your thoughts?
The one thing I would say from a sales perspective, I encourage all the people on the sales team, and me myself included, when I'm speaking to clients, that we lean into the capabilities of TrackTick as a value add of what we can offer to the client. So client transparency, for example, we're in an industry that things are going to happen. That's why you have security. In the last year, I can tell you, no client ever gets upset with a big thing happening. Hey, there was a break-in and whatever. Like, yes, that's the reason why you have security, because these issues are going to happen. It's the little things like, hey, I asked about this NFC tag or this area not being checked, and I asked about this 2 weeks ago. I asked about this a month ago. I asked about this, 3 months ago. It's those little things that keep bubbling up and become a bigger issue. So for us, I'm always saying, like, that's something we pride ourselves in, because we give you access to the reporting. We try to intervene these issues early in real time, because all of us can lean on TrackTick, knowing that the system is basically feeding the rest of our business. So a client never has to worry about getting charged for something incorrectly. They don't need to go audit their invoices, because they know TrackTick is doing it solely based on the hours that are worked, and the system can only do that based on the guard showing up on site. So it's those little things like making our client's job easier to manage their security perspective, because we have TrackTick, is a value added to them. And it's just that transparency. They know everything's going to happen. They know the billing is accurate, so they don't have to worry about it. So we lead with those things and we emphasize those things. And I can say confidently, we've definitely won business because of the capabilities in TrackTick that we're able to present as values that we can bring to the client, because we have TrackTick in our back pocket.
That was a KP. I don't call those the little things. I think a lot of people focus on that. You only have one chance to give a first impression. I'm way more interested in, if you give me an opportunity, I will care every time.
Right.
That's not little. And in an industry of security, you guys are proving that building that reputation is what matters. And that this is, listen, no matter, I'm sure there was a lot of very well-intentioned, incredible things, technology involved, but being in the security industry long enough, this is a trust business. You just described building trust.
And we're also in the industry, also, like, when I talk to clients and I check in with them, I always acknowledge that, hey, like, no news is good news in security. Like, I'm not calling you like, what's going wrong, what happened. But, like, if we're not hearing anything from them, like, no news is good news. And, like, we can check the incident reports, we can go scan. So, like, for us on the client side, all the salespeople, they'll go into TrackTick, take a look at what's going on in the client, check in with them, see how things are going. It's just building that trust. And then for us, we know we can just lean on TrackTick to get that information at any time, and not have to go scramble and ask Novak, Luis, what's going on. It's all one platform that we can work out of.
It's an accountability lever. What a great segue, because I know you guys ran into a challenge, and specifically, KP, you're going to help us talk through this. But it is a ceiling, and it isn't just a one industry issue. I mean, Eric said it. You guys, from restaurants to office buildings, you couldn't be more wide from those operating environments. Standard procedures are all non-standard, right? Like, tell me a little bit about the challenge you guys faced, and when you say, we hit the ceiling, what do you mean? And I think a lot of people are going to resonate with this part of the story. So maybe KP, can you take us through that?
Yeah, and kind of like things we've touched on throughout this conversation is just that the flexibility, the flexibility and the customizability of Tractic allows us to kind of set up every site uniquely based on the site's needs. Like some are residential properties, some are large sprawling condominiums, some are retail, and they all have their different nuances, but we're not stuck to a single process to then try to like kind of MacGyver to fit the needs, but rather we can adjust Tractic to fit the client's needs and the client's process or whatever that ends up being. So for us, it's doing that at a repeatable level on multiple sites. And so we have 20 sites in Washington, 20 sites in Hawaii, 10 in Arizona, 10 in New Mexico. They all have different taxes, different responsibilities. Having all these things function built into a region where we can go and entrust and say, it's been set up correctly for the right state, the compliance is there, the billing is accurate, the guards are there. We also track all the guards, guard card, basically their compliance within Tractic. So we're doing so many different things in one platform. And rather than being like, and I've been at previous companies where it's like, check one thing to check the other thing, to check the other thing. And then as soon as you see a discrepancy, you're like, wait, which one do I go as the source of truth? But the fact that we can all work off Tractic as a singular platform and we're like, whatever's in Tractic is exactly what's happening. The report is being fed directly from the guard tracking in. So if you have any questions or concerns, it's Tractic is the truth, and we go off that. So doing that, having that single source of truth, adding more complexity, it goes hand in hand. Without a single source of truth, adding more complexity would just cause more and more confusion, would require more headcount, and wouldn't work. So for us, it was really that ceiling is, hey, we have this many headcount. They're doing a really good job. We all work remote. How can we pass through the ceiling of being remote, being lean? We need to lean on a technology that can really do a lot of these things for us. And that's kind of where we came to that impasse of like, Tractic is the solution that allows us to grow, but also do it in a way that we can maintain our values of doing what's right and sticking to this core team who, we can all effectively work together really well in with a small amount of people.
Man, I mean, you're certainly striking a chord with me. Kind of the post, in my opinion, I think there's a pre and post COVID world. And Eric, you mentioned the journey as you guys kind of lived through that. And by the way, not everyone was able to thrive. I think there's a distinct type of institution that made those decisions. Eric, what are your thoughts on that ceiling of having to use the same team, dealing with the post-COVID environment? How important is technology? What part did it play in your ability to continue to expand, even though the whole world was going crazy? Like, what are your thoughts on the introduction of technology during that era?
I that post COVID was probably one of the hardest times for us, but also one of the biggest successes for us. We really leaned on the overall technology side of Tractic to allow our team the ability to again work remotely, but at the same time continue to scale and scale quickly based upon what the client's expectations were. Because as you mentioned, restaurants to condominiums to
They were feeling
office.
it. They were feeling
Yeah.
it. Feeling it hard. Yeah.
Interesting enough, our first major contract outside of COVID was 83 Bank of Americas sprawled across 2 states that we had to staff and only had 2 weeks to staff it right in the middle of six, you got to be 6 feet, apart. You got to be wearing a mask. You have to be doing this, and that. And so it really gave us the ability to look at that ceiling, tell ourselves what were we going to face, and how do we manipulate the system to do what we need to do to ensure we're doing what's right.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest things, that our clients' expectations were so heavy at that point. Whether or not the guard was wearing a mask, okay, we can create that report. Whether or not the guard was implementing the 6 feet distance, and really just taking it to a level that gave us the ability to manage all of these complexities without having to sit there and add more add more management team, add more supervisors out in the field. it gave us the ability to scale without having to add the human element of needing somebody out there.
Listen, I think KP, you said it a little bit earlier about basically keeping you honest is, and everyone wants to trust, but we also verify. That's what we do in this field. And so it's not just about trust, it's about that verify. And what a great segment, because I want to talk a little bit about.
Nathan, I'll say this just
please.
to riff off of that. That is probably Sean Wilson is an ex-Marine, and one of his biggest statements he always says is trust but verify.
That's right. No, listen, I'm there. And I think it's incredibly important to appreciate that it is our responsibility. It isn't just an expectation. It's our responsibility to both trust and verify, which I think is a nice segment for you, Eric. And so we're talking about, we're starting this segment of the presentation getting more into the results, but there's obviously things that needed to change, and there was things that you guys had to kind of recalibrate. I love the point you made about making the tool do what you guys do versus you guys have to do what the tool tells you to do. I think I like that analogy. But obviously something else had to change. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that. And you have kind of a couple pillars here you can talk us through. And again, I think this is important for everyone to hear, because it's not just about, hey, let's go buy the greatest cool technology and, oh, let's just do a reduction and increase operating expenses. This doesn't work. Like you have to adapt. And so that's why I really like this part of the story. Is Eric, tell us a little bit about how you adapted. What are some of the tenets here, and how all these pull together?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's take invoicing tied to labor. When you look at invoicing, you want to get paid, right? And you don't want there to be any hiccups in how you're going to get paid. And so for us, having the ability to tie the invoice in with the labor, and knowing that was a true source of information, that the officers were clocking in and clocking out on time, really gave us the ability to kind of take a step back, look at things, and look at things even in a case of, where's our profitability? What state is giving us the most profitability? Where are we the most successful in regards to our invoicing? And knowing that invoicing is going to be tied to labor, that was huge for us. And knowing that we had the ability to really have one source of information that we can depend upon was big for us. The regions, multi-regions, part of what we were facing in knowing that we were moving into different regions was Florida was a different time zone. Florida was, a different tax bracket. All of that information that lives in the regions really helped us build out our TrackTick instance to be one that, as KP keeps mentioning, the single source of truth that allowed us the ability to say, okay, we've got a new contract. It's in Texas. Texas has certain rules and regulations that we need to follow. Let's make sure the system matches exactly what the state is requiring. And that was just big for us, because I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that we deal with by being multi-state is the bureaucracy of each state. Each state really is
cultures, man. Cultures everywhere.
Yeah, it's its own side.
Everywhere. Yeah. I mean, do you think about when you think about the kind of the per contract? I know one of the common things a lot of folks deal with is trying to segment it either by, is it a site by contract? Is it contract by site? Do you kind of organize this hierarchically? Because this is a very common challenge that people are faced with. You're describing almost nail on the head. Like, this is the issue. If you're using a tool that kind of has to treat things uniform, it makes it impossible. You end up pulling data out of the system and calculating it separately. So, feel free to double click on that to kind of give us a little bit of an insight on how you guys decided to kind of organize that separation.
Yeah, I'll tell you, hierarchy was one of the biggest terms that got introduced to us with TrackTick, and knowing that we work with several property management companies that, there's these vendor portal systems that you have to get into just to belong, just to be able to service one of these accounts. And knowing that if you're working with a Greystar or a Lincoln property management company, that hierarchy is really tied into what region is that property in, what is that property's billing requirements, how are we getting, how are we pulling that invoice and getting it to the specific property management, AP department. And so it gave us the ability to conform and align with the property management companies, all while having their own regions and their own hierarchy within the system, so that a Lincoln property management company, whether it's over in Texas or if it's in the state of California or over in Hawaii, no matter where it's at, we can meet the expectations of what the requirements are by those companies. So really, really just a big step forward for us when we were trying to get into these companies that have some serious complexities in just how they get you paid.
No, listen, I say this all the time. Like when we really get into the bowels of this system, and I know Novak's going to appreciate this. Even doing something that you may say straightforward is, I want to get my guards paid. That's a simple thing. We want to get our guards paid. We want to take care of people. In a complex world, that's a complex problem. Doing a simple thing in a complex world is a complex problem. Actually, and inversely is not true. A complex thing in a simple world is actually pretty simple. So just trying to get following tax regulations. Yeah, that sounds straightforward. We've been doing it for a long time, right? Doing that in 8 states, right? All of a sudden, it isn't times 8. It's 16 or 24 times more sophisticated. And now all of a sudden, your head is spinning just trying to do something that's supposedly simple. So that configuration is something that, we regularly think a lot about, of how do we balance the needed complexity, which no one likes, to the necessary complexity that everyone needs. That's certainly something we think a lot about.
Yeah, and Nathan, I'll tell you, I mean, as states become more and more complex in how they're operating security and the regulations that they're putting out there, states like Nevada, not only do you have to have your state license, but you're also looking at a county license. You're also looking at a city license, just to operate within those, in those areas. And so having those regions and having the track tick system set up properly really is a huge relief to our accounting team and our accounts receivables.
Yeah, awesome. And I wanted to just touch on one thing that just came to my mind. And I would imagine for the attendees, some are business owners, operators. When security is a very cash flow driven business, we're invoicing clients, we're paying the guards, we're invoicing clients, paying the guards, and that's on and on and on. Because the invoicing is tied to labor, there's no discrepancies, and we're getting paid. When it's net 30, maybe they pay us the next week. But the reason what I'm trying to say is that kind of the in between the lines things that you don't notice is that cash flow is smoother when we have the invoice tied to labor, because there's no back and forth with the client. We don't have to wait after the 30 days, hey, like you're delinquent or whatever. It's just, it runs a lot smoother, which allows us to do our jobs better, make it easier. And then the role-based access thing too is something I say all the time, and both Eric and I say is like, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. That's more of like a sales thing, but we're bleeding that into the supervisors. So with the role-based access, the supervisors have access to the sites that they cover. And when they go visit a client or there's an issue, we can always go to TrackTick and say, was it documented? If it's not in TrackTick, then it didn't happen or you didn't document it. But that's the value we bring back to the client, because we take note of that information. So for a business owner, not only can TrackTick help you scale your operations, but allows you to check and be more, forces your team to be more accountable. And you can check on your team remotely by viewing the dispatch, viewing the supervisor reports, viewing the notes of their system, and allows as an owner to see more of their business at any one time looking into the system. That's something we haven't necessarily specifically touched on, but if there's any owners or operators in the attendees, that's an additional benefit. You can just see what your team is doing in real time.
I think I'm going to file that in the bucket of, do more with the same, right? Where you can now use cycles. I think it was actually Novak talking about earlier, just you have extra cycles to use for things that are more pragmatic and more practical.
Right.
Well, so as we're gonna move off of this slide, but I think it's really important to then kind of transition to something that we all care about, which is more around the results. So this could all be lip service. There's a lot of reasons to buy technology. There's a lot of interesting trends out there. If we're not producing legitimate, meaningful results, you guys wouldn't be excited about it. You certainly wouldn't be participating in this session. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Luis here to talk a little bit about the outcomes. Obviously, we've talked about the setup, we've talked about the value, certainly getting more time on the ground. I'm mostly interested at the end of the day is how did this directly, positively, or potentially alternatively affect you guys? At least tell us a little bit about some of the proof points is what I would call this part of the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Nathan. So TrackTick on operational side, it provides a lot of analytics, right? It allows us to stay ahead of a curve rather than being presented by the client. And on several occasions, with the analytics that TrackTick provides, we've been able to increase revenue on several properties, whether it's adding extra hours, adding extra guards, maybe moving from a 32-hour work week to a 24/7 work week, right? So there's a
We all
lot.
like that. More revenue is good. You're speaking my
Yeah,
language.
definitely. Extra revenue is always good. But on an operational standpoint, we are, like as I mentioned, we're able to stay ahead of a curve and correct any issues before it's presented by the client. And we won't be able to do that without the analytics that TrackTix provides, right? So I think it's an amazing, amazing platform. Also to be able to create various report templates to provide the analytics that we want to see within the system, right? And I think just being able to grow extra revenue based on these analytics that TrackCheck provides and be able to present those analytics on a monthly basis to the client has been very, very effective for us. And TrackTick played a major role in the World Games and Olympic trials that we provided services for in the past years.
And listen, what jumped out at me right away is one, I kind of go back to the whole team over at Pono that no one wins a contract like the Olympic trials unless you guys are trusted, established, technology aside, right? That's a well-earned trust and respect that you guys deserve. I'm very curious to see what part TrackTick played in that part, which I think is probably a small part, right? You guys did all the hard stuff, but how did Tractic affect your not only the ability to win that, but execute and operate? And I think we actually have a distinct slide just for that. But I would be curious to see, Luis, obviously your perspective, and then any of the other Pono team members, kind of where we fit into that story.
Yeah. Oh, great. I recall, staring at Eric when we were both in Oregon, and I just look at him,
By the way,
and I'm like,
I was born and raised in Oregon, so just saying.
So I just look at Eric, I'm like, how are we gonna do this? Like you're a maniac for taking this on, right? Like, we love that attitude. And after discussing just several options, TrackTick was a no-brainer, right? We had a short period of time to hire thousands of employees. And TrackTick played a major role. It wasn't a small role. It played a major role in our smooth operations from the beginning to the end, allowing us for smooth operations on clock ins, clock outs, developing a team, getting them into the payroll. TrackTick was a no-brainer for us to utilize that platform, and it was successful for us at the end, right? And that's why we
And
were
by the way,
able
we
to.
heard about it if it wasn't. So obviously you guys did a great job, right? That's not something that doesn't go incredibly well documented pretty much across the board.
Right.
Definitely congratulations with that. I think that's
I believe TrackTick provided us a great assist on knocking this out of the park. And this, it gave us a footprint in the event world to receive a lot more major events following that.
big proof point.
And Nathan, if you don't mind going back, I'd like to touch on just a few of the items. And one of the biggest ones that stands out and would be the 8%. And when you're talking millions of dollars in labor, saving the client 8% was a huge number. And we couldn't have done that without TrackTick and the scheduling.
Small percentage and a big number is a big number. That's just that's how math works.
And when we were going into the bidding process for the World, so it first started with the Olympic trials back in 2022, and then we were awarded the World Games in Eugene, same location. Part of what was the differentiating factor was how much money we did save the Olympic trials during the event, because the client had expectations of a certain number of being spent. We could have gone in and just placed, officers or guards at locations just to eat up hours and meet, their budget. We ended up going in and saying, wait, we don't need the officer here this full shift, because we can rotate officers in and give, have roving officers that are giving breaks and whatnot. And that was all done through Tractic, and the knowing how to look at the scheduling within inside of Tractic and seeing where we could save the client money, where money was due to be saved. The onboarding process, I will tell you right now, Tractic made it so much easier to be able to onboard 400 to 900 officers. And again, those are just the officers that worked. It wasn't actually all the officers that were hired at that point. And then the next day pay, that was the incentive. You're hiring all these officers, you're putting them all through training, you're wanting to incentivize them to keep coming back throughout the duration of the event. Having next day pay and the ability to have next day pay was really a big differential for us when doing that recruitment process, because no other company was willing to do it. We were willing to go out, put ourselves out there, say that we could do this, and then turn around and actually successfully do it was huge for us, because we knew that the officers were standing in front of us. They were clocking in, that we were, they had to surrender their IDs to us to ensure that they were going to stay on post, return their uniforms back to us at the end of their shift, and then turn around and get them paid the following day. Those labor reports that Tractic was producing was not only the accuracy that gave the client back the 8%, but it was also the accuracy of the Tractic system that gave us the ability to do the next day pay. So again, what was successful was our ability to make Tractic do what we wanted it to do in regards to the event platform.
And at the end of the day, do what's right for the client. I think that's the big takeaway there, is that not only did you have access to the information, not everyone would have decided to then use it as you just described. I mean, this is going that building that trust, and it makes a lot of sense why you guys were then obviously awarded later similar and more progressive projects. That's an awesome outcome.
Definitely.
All right, so we're switching gears a little bit and maybe going a little bit more high level, but obviously I want to use and kind of build on the conversation that we've been having. And this is, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to both Eric and KP to give me your thoughts on this. And when I reflect around kind of the pre-post COVID era, the pre-COVID era, we were able to use technology where it made the most sense. I think post, we have to use technology just to operate and exist. And so there's very few of those kind of just optional opportunities. But there's a difference, a big difference between something that we have to do and something that's different, and something that's unique and special. And so Eric, KP, whoever would like to jump in first, tell me a little bit about what makes this type of technology a differentiator, obviously with the context of the last 45 minutes.
Sure. I'm gonna give this over to KP, because this guy is technology driven and comes from companies. One of the biggest recruitment efforts we did was pulling KP in because of his background in technology. So KP, take it away.
So I think Novak kind of touched on this as well, but just the fact that Tractic allows, and I've said this before, like Tractic allows us to do the job of managing the guards and the personnel easier. And because it's easier, we have more time to think about the next thing. So sometimes I joke, like, we're also focused on doing certain things. We're like literally looking down and not looking up about the next thing. We're focusing on the immediate, these issues, or whatever might be in Tractic. But because Tractic manages so much of our business, myself, Novak, Eric, Luis, we all have a little bit more free time to think about how we can improve the business. And so I know we work very closely with our Tractic partner, Oscar. Novak works with them very closely, but it's because we have Tractic, we're so familiar with the platform. We then go back to Oscar and say, like we're kind of at this point, we have an idea about how we can maybe make the analytics a little bit better, or a custom report a little bit better. And the TrackForce team is very, very responsive, and we work on improving the business. So what I should say is that not only is Tractic solving our business needs, it's making our time to run the business less, which is giving us more time to think about improving the business going forward. So when I think about compounding, that's the effect. It's giving us, it's doing everything we needed to do. It's making those things easier to manage. And with the free time, we are then able to go back and say, how can we get more out of this tool? Because we have time to ideate. And with our expertise and leveraging all the functionality, the different regions, the different reporting, Novak's definitely an expert, probably more of an expert than some folks that you guys have on your end because he works in a day out, a day out. But that's just how we can compound. It's like it's solving our problems and it's also enabling us to solution for the next upcoming problem, if that makes sense.
And knowing too, I mean, we all know there's still companies out there that are doing handwritten reports, and
a
lot more than we could probably add up. But at the same time, the abilities that we've been able to have, and especially working with Oscar and the TrackForce team, we can take those ideas, and we've done this several times. We can take those ideas, present them to your team, and then your team build upon those ideas or give us ways of doing things that we never thought about doing. And that to me is a huge differentiator for us, because we want the technology, we need the technology, but also knowing that we have a team like TrackForce and Oscar to support us in the growth of what we're looking to do really just makes our lives so much easier when it comes to making decisions and being able to look at the bigger picture, not having, looking at that ceiling and saying, how are we going to bust through that ceiling? What are we going to do? What can we do to get there? And how are we going to do it? And what does that roadmap look like? And I would say the team at TrackForce, and especially Oscar, I got to give him a huge shout out. Oscar, if you're listening, he has really supported us in taking what we thought was just an off the wall idea and putting it in and really getting it implemented. And that all, not only does it support the officers out in the field, but supports our clients at a very high level.
Now, listen, I love to hear that, and listen, this is what we're here for and what we do. I think that as an institution, being able to really focus on companies like Pono, and by the way, it's actually a two-way street. You would probably be surprised how many great ideas that we would have never thought of, right? Unless you called us and we ideated. You just told the inverse version of that story, but like being around in the space for almost 18 years, having all of these companies that we've interfaced with, every day, like literally every day I get something in and I'm like, man, I haven't even thought of that.
Yeah.
But being
and I'll say this, Nathan, if anybody has not used Data Lab, I recommend Data Lab, because Data Lab is really taking all of your information and making it customized to how you want to see it on a dashboard. And as a COO of a company that's operating in 8 different states, hundreds of officers, several management teams, different departments, being able to have dashboards that are exactly what I want to see really allows me to measure when something's going into the red or something's in the green, and I can focus on what I need to focus on. So Data Lab has just been a monumental step for us when it comes to looking at a dashboard, saying, this is where our attention needs to be. Let's move our attention to that direction while everything else is running smooth on the other side.
Well, I love that point, Eric. And actually, I think we'll move on to one of our last slides before we get into Q&A. And I think that's exactly where I would like to then maybe put this on the Pono team. So the Data Labs is a great example. What are some kind of final thoughts of things that advice you would give, whether you're early on in the journey? We've got quite a few folks on the WebEx. I just looked. What type of advice you give to someone that's either early, mid, long term, maybe something that was kind of the most reflective? Data Labs is a good example. By the way, we don't have, I think we should have more people using our Data Labs capabilities. I think it's actually, a really relatively small 20-30% of our population is using it today. I think that's a great example of that. If maybe I could point that to each one of you and just give me kind of your kind of final thoughts on something that you've either learned through this journey or something you want to share with someone that might be in the same situation.
Novak, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the last thing that we talked about is definitely the technology, and with that oversight that Tractic provides, the guards are never alone on the field. Even though the clients are asking for, let's say, one security guard at their location, they're always getting another supervisor or a dispatch or whoever just overseeing them at all times. And it helps us identify potential liabilities and work to eliminate them before it escalates. So it's definitely something that's helped us provide better service, and better service is always keeping those clients satisfied, and that's all that we want to do.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just say that I personally don't have a ton of experience with other platforms. So to me, TrackTech is just what I know. And so I would say it's just the continuous innovation with the platform. Just like we just previously talked about, products are improving, whether it's a conversation between the customers back to the client, or to TrackForce to us in terms of things that are coming out. I'm on the sales side, so I mention these things oftentimes to the clients. We have a client portal access, you have ease of access, the reporting's all done, it's all done in real time. And I tell clients also too is like, we're not expecting you to be the expert in security. You have multiple things you need to manage, but that's the benefit of you working with the Pono Security team, because we can be your security management team, and we will bring to bear the most innovation when it comes to security, whether it's personnel technology, but also we have the leading software when it comes to guard tracking software. So not only can we service your needs now, but you're working with a company who's invested in a solution that's going to continue growing. So again, something I present in sales. So rather than, yes, you could go with company ABC, maybe they do hand reporting, or maybe they have some light guard tracking software, but will your needs be met in 2 years, or are you going to have to change again?
Right.
You go with a Pono Security that's partnered with a strong platform like TrackForce and TrackTick that's going to continue evolving. The client gets that satisfaction knowing that the company I'm working with is going to meet my needs now. They're going to present solutions that can potentially meet my needs in the future, and they're going to be that true partner I can work with. Because you said something earlier about change, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. And our clients would just prefer continue working with us because we have all these capabilities and we continue to grow to meet their needs as needs change over time.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I think to touch on that a little bit is always try to emphasize is how do we demonstrate our value to the client consistently, especially if you've been working that site for several years and you've been having that contract years for years for years. It's how do you keep that consistency? And I think TrackTech has allowed us to demonstrate that exact value through analytics, report templates, just overall everything that we need to demonstrate our value to the client. I think one feature that TrackTech added that is amazing on the operational side is the AI feature when it comes to the report writing, right? Where you can select the AI and it redoes the employee's report very professionally, right? So I think overall, TrackTech has a lot more potential, and overall, one of the best platforms that I've ever utilized.
Yeah. And I'll second that, and follow up with what KP and Luis and Novak said. And that is, I consistently cannot wait for the new, you log into the back end portal system and all of a sudden, what's new? What has changed? And I am just, I always look for growth. I'm always driven by growth. And one of the things that TrackTech continues to do is just grow and grow in regards to what its capabilities are. And I've seen it from, the last 4 years, what has changed. And I'm excited to see what the next 4 years, because technology is only getting better, and TrackTech and Pono Security together as a partner, we're on the same page. We want to see that growth in technology. We want to see the changes coming out. And you guys are I think one of the things that you guys have really given us is transparency into what is new and up and coming, and what ideas you guys have that are coming out in regards to our sector of the industry of security. And that is knowing that it's just not being stagnant. No, I use that in some of my sales pitches where, TrackTech is great for us, because we can go in and we can manipulate the system to do what we want it to do. But there's also changes that TrackTick is doing that are just consistently growing in the technology side of what the platform has to offer.
Yeah, Eric. So listen, I love your attitude. The adoption attitude actually not only helps us kind of expand and grow, but those are the kind of clients we like to interact with. People that want to see progression, because we're right there with you. And there's still a long way to go, by the way. This is an old industry, and yet I feel like it's young, and especially with the adoption of new technology and AI-based cameras and new sensors and new checkpoint types, and even the advancements in GPS have changed a lot. So, one, we've run out of time. We did receive a few questions. We tried to address those as we went along. Anyone that we have not addressed your question directly, we will be writing you back in response. I did try to get through most of them during our dialogue. When the session ends, there will be a survey. Feel free to fill that out. We are very interested in your feedback. I just want to give a personal thank you to the Pono Security team. I think this is very engaging. All of you guys were incredible. I wish your company not only all of the success, but I think all of us should try to just do the right thing. And I love that you guys are out there doing it, and just appreciate everybody for the session today. And like I said, we'll follow up with the questions we weren't able to address.
And last thing, if you could just include our email information to the distribution list, like we're happy to answer any questions. And
Yep.
we're also actively looking to partner with other security companies too, so it could potentially be a fruitful conversation. So any of the questions, I see some of the questions in the chat, like feel free to reach out to us directly too.
Great suggestion, KP. Thank you.